Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903.
As a constitutional law attorney, former senior legal advisor, and personal counsel to President Donald J. Trump, Jenna Ellis believes in the rule of law and the importance of integrity in our elections. And she's ready to tackle the big cultural and legal issues facing America. This is the Jenna Ellis Show. Here is your host, Jenna Ellis.
Episode of the Jenna Ellis Show. I'm Jenna Ellis, and it seems like the Democratic left and the Biden administration just can't stop going woke and pushing their gender and sexual ideology on to Americans, and especially children. So now Republicans and conservatives are finally fighting back with the law. So I wanted to bring your attention today to a couple of really important cases that have been initiated. So the first of which is that 22 states are now suing the Biden administration over transgender rules for a school lunch program. So get this, the Washington Examiner and others are reporting today that 22 states sued the Biden administration for requiring states participating in the federal school lunch program to include gender identity and sexual orientation as protected under the definition of sex in Title IX. So yes, the Biden administration is actually trying to forcibly compel these schools to participate and accept sexual orientation and gender identity language and usage in schools if they want to receive federal funding for school lunch programs. So the Biden administration cares more about the preferred gender identity that a teacher wants to push onto a child than they do about that child getting fed. This is so outrageous and so ridiculous. So in the lawsuit filed Tuesday in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Tennessee, again, reading from Washington Examiner, it alleges the Department of Agriculture, which oversees the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which includes the National School Lunch Program, violated the Administrative Procedure Act when it issued a May 5th memorandum. The 22 states argue that the school lunch decision also misinterpreted the 2020 Supreme Court case in Bostock versus Clayton, which, as we know, that was the one that remarkably Justice Gorsuch had a terrible opinion on and expanded the definition of sex in employment law in that 1960s law that Congress just had protections for the differences between the two genders, and it was supposed to be protections for women, but then it read into that 1964 law, sexual orientation and gender identity in the definition of sex, which was, of course, a complete misreading of the congressional statute. Of course, Congress back in the 1960s was not at all contemplating SOGI language or sexual orientation, gender identity language when they constructed the Civil Rights Protection Act. So that was ridiculous. But then going back to this story, the directive by the Agricultural Department required schools and states that wish to receive funds allocated for the National School Lunch Program to interpret Title IX, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in educational settings, to include gender identity and sexual orientation under the term sex, as was done by the Supreme Court in the Bostock decision. So the lawsuit says that the department, in issuing the memorandum, as well as subsequently filing a similar, finalizing a similar regulation from the end of the Obama administration that was never enacted, failed to follow the APA requirements that agencies publish a notice of rulemaking and then provide for a period of public comment when making a regulatory change. That's standard procedure. It also claims that the department's policies are arbitrary, capricious, an abuse of discretion, or otherwise not in accordance with the law, and, quote, are premised on a misreading and unwarranted extension of Bostock. So the Tennessee Attorney General Slattery said in a press release announcing the lawsuit, quote, "This case is yet again about a federal agency trying to change the law, which is Congress's exclusive prerogative. The USDA simply does not have that authority. We have successfully challenged the Biden administration's other attempts to rewrite the law, and we will challenge this as well." So this case, I think, is a great start for these 22 states that have sued the Biden administration for this overreach. This is the exact same type of thing that the Biden administration tried to do with the vaccine mandates. Remember when it tried to compel through the OSHA mandates that somehow the statute that Congress gave some limited authority for OSHA to oversee workplace safety regulations, that somehow meant that they could compel employers with more than 100 employees to forcibly vaccinate their workers or have to fire them? The Supreme Court rightly in that case said absolutely not. That is not what Congress directed. It is a broad overreach and totally not within the definition of the statutory construction. So this is exactly what the Biden administration is trying to do here when they're trying to rewrite into a school lunch program dollars, forcibly saying that schools have to accept their definition of SOGI language and basically rewrite Title IX just in light of this remarkably terrible decision from the Supreme Court. So I hope that this challenge goes far and has the same result as ultimately the OSHA decision, because Congress, as the Tennessee Attorney General rightly said, is the only body that has that legislative prerogative. The executive branch can't just go interpreting and broadly construing statutory construction and overreaching just whenever it desires. It's rewriting the law. And so, of course, we do have issues like Chevron deference and some of these other things that come into play, which a lot of attorneys, including myself, think is totally ridiculous. And it's giving the administrative arm of the government far too much power. And interestingly, Justice Gorsuch, and along throughout his entire tenure on the 10th Circuit, really hated the administrative state and was one of the conservative champions to try to roll back all of those powers, including Chevron deference. So it was a surprise to a lot of people, I think, even though, everybody said, oh, well, we read the tea leaves correctly, but, you never really can. I think it was a surprise for a lot of people when he was on the majority for the Bostock decision, because that absolutely gave way more authority to the administrative state through a misinterpretation and an obviously wrongful interpretation of congressional intent when they wrote that statute. And so hopefully the Supreme Court will do the same thing that they did in the OSHA case here and will say absolutely not. Title IX is what it is, and you can't put federal funding for school lunch programs with strings attached just to go along with the Biden administration's woke and arbitrary and capricious opinions on what schools should do with sexual orientation and gender identity. It's ridiculous. So I am glad to see 22 states that are finally pushing back and are saying no, and they're filing these types of lawsuits. Lawfare is something that really the left has been weaponizing and they have been using to their advantage. And when we see cases like this that actually have a very good legal basis and should be argued, these are the types of cases I'm glad to see attorneys general filing, because they need to not allow the Biden administration to overreach so far in the executive branch and the administrative state. So Ron DeSantis in Florida is also initiating a lawsuit, and this is another great one that came out exclusively in Breitbart just yesterday. The headline is exclusive: Ron DeSantis's Florida files a complaint against a bar that held a lewd drag show for children. So once again, this is the left wanting to over-sexualize our children and push their sexual orientation, gender identity nonsense without any sort of accountability to anyone. And so the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, the DPBR, apparently is the acronym for that, served a complaint on Tuesday on a bar in Miami that offers drag shows to children, which was recently featured in a viral video showing a topless drag queen attempting to entertain a young girl. This is so disgusting, so despicable, and actually is in my opinion, rises to the level of potentially a criminal inquiry, because this is sexual exploitation of a child. So many other things where the parents probably sitting right next to the girl, which is disgusting and shocking as well. But here, the Our House Bar, which is located in the Wynwood area of Miami, has 21 days to respond to the administrative complaint. If the bar is found to be in violation of local laws and codes, it could then lose its liquor license, effectively putting it out of business, because everyone knows that you can't really have a strip club and lewd shows without alcohol for all of these people who go to disgusting and perverted places like that. So this is a great thing that Ron DeSantis's administration in the state of Florida is doing by saying we are not going to allow these violations of local law to just go unchecked, and to not use the power of the state to go in. And this is actually a good regulation and a good method of law enforcement to say, wait a minute, we have to still protect children. And so why we are allowing in the Republican circles a lot of this woke agenda and ideology to just get through unchecked, unchallenged. No, we can't continue to do that anymore. And it doesn't do any good to just sit here and, post on Twitter and be all vocal about this is terrible and look at all the, the woke ideology and whatever. We have to fight back with the tools that are available within the margins of the law and the Constitution. So everyone, of course, knows that I was not an advocate of Ron DeSantis going, in my view, outside the bounds of the law by retaliating against a corporation in Florida. Of course, that would be the Walt Disney Company, for their exercise of constitutionally protected speech by simply opposing the parental rights and education bill. And so that, in my view, went over and above the ability of a state actor and a government agent to try to quell political speech. Now, that doesn't mean that anyone associated or working with, or anyone else in the state of Florida with Walt Disney Company or anyone else who is actually committing criminal offenses like grooming children, like sexual assaults, like anything else, like this strip club who is clearly going against the regulations of the state of Florida and should be shut down, lose their liquor license, all of that. Those types of things are absolutely enforceable, but we need to also draw the line between what is appropriate for the state to enforce versus what is an overreach, like the Biden administration overreaching and saying that they are going to then bootstrap dollars for school lunches to this whole woke ideology and their transgender identity, sexual orientation, language, ridiculous nonsense. So these are a couple of the really great headlines that are coming out that I wanted you to be aware of, so that we can continue to advocate for, and most importantly, vote for these types of politicians and these types of elected officials who will actually enforce the law and do the right thing when they have the opportunity. So I'm very proud of these 22 states, very proud of Ron DeSantis and also his Department of Business and Professional Regulation for actually going after these types of overreaches in the right, proper, and legal way. So we'll be following these lawsuits, of course, bring you any updates. And then the last update that is a great win for the rule of law and why it's very effective to go out and simply send cease and desist letters, send notices of litigation, send notices of, of defamation and saying, hey, you can't do that. My good friend Charlie Kirk, who is, of course, the CEO and president of Turning Point USA, sent a cease and desist letter to The View. Yes, of course. I mean, The View should just cease and desist altogether, right? Especially because it's hired the most ridiculously non-Republican conservative person ever to supposedly be in the Republican chair. But, whatever. I mean, they can have their narcissistic, crazy, asinine leftist views for the people who want to tune in. I mean, that's free speech, and that's the ability of entertainment, right? But what they can't do is remark and make comments on things that are provably and factually false. So what happened is that Turning Point USA, of course, had all of these people at their Student Action Summit last week in Florida, had all these people who were protesting outside and people who were not part of the event, not even remotely associated, affiliated, or even invited, show up outside the venue waving Nazi flags, having, all kinds of, issues and stuff. And of course, The View tries to paint Turning Point as a white supremacist neo-Nazi group just because some unaffiliated people came and decided to wave Nazi flags. This is the ultimate in a false flag, literally. And so Turning Point slaps The View with a cease and desist. And that was also reported not only in Breitbart, but also from a lot of different outlets. And today, Turning Point USA actually won because as Breitbart, I love the way that they phrase this, they said, update, TPUSA won, The View Harpies have apologized and retracted their lies. Listen to this.
So on Monday, we talked about the fact that there were openly neo-Nazi demonstrators outside the Florida Student Action Summit of the Turning Point USA group. We want to make clear that these demonstrators were gathered outside the event and that they were not invited or endorsed by Turning Point USA. A Turning Point USA spokesman said the group, quote, 100% condemns those ideologies, and said Turning Point USA security tried to remove the neo-Nazis from the area but could not because they were on public property. Also, Turning Point USA wanted us to clarify that this was a Turning Point USA summit and not a Republican Party event. So we apologize for anything we said that may have been unclear on these points.
All right, so congratulations to Charlie Kirk and my good friends at Turning Point USA. This is exactly why you can't ever let anyone get away with false and defamatory statements, and especially the mainstream media when they think that the First Amendment protects everything, and because they are activists, not journalists, that they can just go ahead with all of this knowing, verifiably false and malicious misinformation and actually false statements. And they can get away with it with zero accountability. But places like Turning Point, like our friends at Project Veritas, are pushing back, as well as great Republicans like Ron DeSantis and like the Attorney General of Tennessee. So Republicans and conservatives and Christians need to do more with lawfare to push back against not only the woke ideology of the ridiculous left that is trying to impose this on our children and our society and our culture, but we also have to push back when they say false and misleading statements in the media that are designed simply to try to tear down great organizations like TPUSA, like Project Veritas, and like other great conservative organizations. And turning now to an important discussion about the recession, I had the opportunity to sit down with my good friend Charles Thorngren, who of course is the president and CEO of Legacy Precious Metals that we're proud to partner with here at the Salem Podcast Network. And so listen to what he has to say about the recession and how you can make sure to protect your retirement and your wealth. And if you didn't catch it, just yesterday, I had a great discussion with Tho Bishop, who is part of the Mises Institute, on how the left is trying to redefine recession. That is always a great podcast. Make sure you are subscribed to The Jenna Ellis Show so you never miss an episode. Go to thejennaellisshow.com or wherever you stream podcasts. Now listen to this with Charles Thorngren. Hello, friends. I'm Jenna Ellis, host of The Jenna Ellis Show on the Salem Podcast Network, and it is always my pleasure to have an interview with Charles Thorngren, who is the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is one of our great sponsors and partners here at the Salem Podcast Network. So, Charles Thorngren, thank you so much for joining me again.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I always love these conversations and learning more about why to invest in gold and what is a good and precious metals and what's a good strategy around that, especially given the current headlines. One of the reports that I was seeing on another network was that if there is a digital breach and there is some sort of cybersecurity incident that a lot of people are predicting that will happen, this report alleged that basically all of our digital currency, the numbers that we see when we log into our bank accounts, will be essentially meaningless. And so that report was suggesting that only if you invest in gold and precious metals will you really have any financial security. What's your take on that?
Yeah, interesting point of conversation. And without trying to sound too conspiracy minded, most of the currency we have in the United States is digital. It's numbers that are added to our bank accounts. It's not an actual dollar amount that's printed. It's not the cash that you have in your pocket. Most people, and this is why we use ATM cards and debit cards and Visa cards. It's all electronic. And anytime you have something electronic, you have something that's not tangible, and it is subject to a shutdown, whether it's controlled by the government saying we're going on a spending holiday, we can't control inflation, you don't get to spend money. We're going to shut down that system for a while. Sound crazy, right? But it's happened. It hasn't happened here in the United States for quite some time. But it has happened, and it's happened in the world recently as well. So anything that's not tangible, physical in nature, you have to worry about that kind of control. And we talk about cryptos and things like that. That fits into that same parameter. I'm not saying that don't invest in cryptos, but what I am saying is make sure that your security, your insurance for your retirement, for your portfolio is based in something physical and tangible. That way, you always have it. It's always real and it's always going to be there. That's how you sidestep that. Now, the other things, yes, great. Investments, they should be diversified. Plenty of room to take advantage of in that digital world, but don't make that the security. Make that the Vegas trip, the riskier type of investment you want to partake in. But stick to the safety of metals for that true safety.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think for a lot of us, we see banks as a safe place to protect our wealth. And we look at those numbers and the digital currency as something that is tangible, even though it's not physical. The only physical representation we have is, maybe a debit or credit card. But we also would think of banks as having a fiduciary obligation to us as the customer and someone who actually owns the bank account. But we're seeing in places like China, for example, just this week, reports are surfacing that tanks are actually guarding the banks because they are now saying that the wealth that is in the bank is now apparently the government is looking at that as a quote unquote investment, and it's not actually a security and ownership property of the bank account holders. And that seems like something totally foreign and ridiculous, but could that happen in banks here in America?
It has, and it's happened recently. If we look at China right now, we understand that it's a communist nation. It follows a more socialist principle. And socialism is that word we get, we hear a lot nowadays as an American people, without our consent, move towards a more socialist nation. Those that have power right now are looking to keep pressing that. But that means that the government is involved. And anytime you have a government involved, they take over the lead position. Whatever's best for them is what gets done, not what's best for you and I. And this is why when America was created, it was supposed to be of the people, for the people, by the people. We've seemed to have stepped away from that, but we have an election coming. We have things happening where we can change things again. But understand that principle is still in effect. Anytime the government is involved, you have a superior debtor, you have a superior ownership by that government in whatever you may be involved with them. You must keep that in mind. So yes, we've had a problem. We could see it here. If you look at IndyMac back in 2008, right when the big financial collapse happened, IndyMac was in trouble. They had guaranteed all these loans and they could not meet the requirements that they needed to have in cash. So what did they do? They don't talk about it much, but they created a bank holiday. They shut down access to people who had money in that bank So they could not get it out until they found a fix for it. And that was where we saw all of the big things and all the money given out to banks. And now all of a sudden, investment firms have to be owned by banks because the government couldn't give it to an investment firm, but they could give it to a bank. And that bank would then in turn invest into the brokerage house or another smaller bank. So it happens. It happens a lot. Most people don't understand that. That's why we have the FDIC, the Federal Depository Insurance Company. Okay. But that doesn't guarantee you penny for penny. There's a dollar limit. If you exceed that dollar limit, that's all you're getting back. If you have more than $120,000 in that account, you may not get more than $120,000 back from that federal government if that bank fails. So these are why we look and say, let's get something protective in place. Let's get that insurance on our wealth. As we're building, it makes sense. Do other things, but always keep your security, keep your foundation strong.
Yeah. So as people are looking at this, and I think a lot more people are paying attention to protecting their wealth, what are the best steps that individuals can take, and how can Legacy Precious Metals help?
Yeah, great question. One of the best things that we can do, and that's something that a lot of us don't tend to do, but we should be more aware of how we spend our money, right? We need to have a plan in place to say, okay, I'm going to still enjoy my life, but I'm going to make sure that I put money aside so that I can enjoy my retirement, that I can have money for that rainy day. And you want to be able to do that in something that you don't touch, that you put away, and you make it a habit. That habit's what's going to create wealth for you. Now, when you have that money, you look at a precious metals, for example, right? That's something that's going to store wealth over time. It's something that's going to be counterproductive to the dollar as the dollar gets weaker through regular inflation, never mind hyperinflation. You see those metals enact a protection to keep that purchasing power strong. So if you take the habit of saving and you take the habit of investing in physical metals or other areas where you have security, normally I say real estate. I don't say that right now because of what's happening with real estate and interest rates. The higher interest rates go, less value you're getting out of your home. So under normal times, you'd have your real estate, you'll have your metals, and then you'll have that safety of a tangible asset. Okay. We want to maybe look at real estate a couple years down the road. We've got some things that need to be fixed there. But in the meanwhile, metals still make sense.
Mm-hmm. We definitely need some fixes, like maybe a new president. So, hopefully the midterms will give us a good shift toward the right direction, and people actually care about the consumers in this country and the American people in this country. And then, as we head into 2024. But thank you so much, Charles Thorngren. And people can go to legacypm.com and download the free investors guide. And where else can they find you on social media and the phone number to call?
Legacy's Precious Metals. Find us everywhere. We're on all the social. I don't do the social myself. I have to be honest. I'm not that tech savvy. But anywhere that you get your social, you'll find us. Go to the website. That's the best place. All of our contact information is there. And when you do reach out, let us know that you heard about us from Jenna. We love Jenna. And we want to make sure that we treat each and every one of her people with the respect they deserve. So it's always great when we hear that affirmation that Jenna sent us here. So please do that when you do contact us.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Charles, and look forward to talking with you soon. And so everyone go to legacypm.com. You can download the free investors guide. You can call up Charles Thorngren and his great staff of people who will give you a personal consultation for your specific investing needs and questions. Coming from a legal background, I know that when I've had clients call me, they have a diverse range of issues and questions. And you want to talk to someone who will take time to understand your specific needs, your goals. And I know from experience that Legacy Precious Metals does absolutely that. And so you can have confidence in your investments and in securing your future. So thanks again, Charles. Look forward to talking with you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Legacy Precious Metals is the company that I trust to give you good and patient counsel for investing in your retirement. The Biden administration has caused a financial crisis, and they have no clue how to fix it. Oil prices have skyrocketed, and when oil prices go up, not only do your expenses go up, but the cost of transportation and shipping spikes, leading the prices of goods to rise. And when and we are already seeing record inflation. That's the last thing that we need. Our economy is in trouble, and you need to take steps to protect yourself. If all your money is tied up in stocks, bonds, and traditional markets, you may be vulnerable. So gold is one of the very best ways to protect your retirement. No matter what happens, you own your own gold. It's real, it's physical, and it's always been valuable since the dawn of time. Call Legacy Precious Metals today at 866-528-1903 or visit them online at legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com, where you can download the free investor's guide. You can also go to my Facebook page, Jenna Ellis. I am a public figure on Facebook, and I just posted yesterday a really great interview with the president of Legacy Precious Metals, who is discussing why you need to start your retirement account even if you're in your 20s or 30s. There is always a great time to protect your retirement and invest, just like you want to protect your health over the long term. So go to Legacy Precious Metals at legacypminvestments.com or call 866-528-1903. MyPillow is having their biggest sheet sale of the year. You all have helped build MyPillow into the amazing company that it is today. Now, Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, wants to give back exclusively to you, his listeners. The Percale bed sheet set is available in a variety of colors and sizes, and they are all on sale. So, for example, the queen size is regularly priced at $89.98, but is now only $39.98 with our listener promo code Jenna, Jenna. So order now, because when they're gone, they're gone. The Percale bed sheets are breathable and have a cool and crisp feel. These come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so don't miss out on this incredible offer. There's a limited supply, so be sure to order now. You can call 1-800-564-8475 and use the promo code Jenna, or go to mypillow.com/Jenna. You can click on the radio listeners square and use the promo code Jenna. That's Jenna. Thank you so much to all of Mike Lindell's listeners and listeners of this podcast for making sure to support MyPillow and using our exclusive listener promo code Jenna. That's Jenna.